The state of Florida has kind of halfway, quasi, started allowing some sports wagering. So our very own Collin Sherwin wanted to come on and give everybody a little lesson in sports wagering from somebody that's been able to get out of state and do it a little bit.
So, Seth, I'm glad you're here for this so I can have somebody to talk to because I was worried about talking to a wall by myself doing this.
I'm excited. I'll throw in questions when they seem fit. I've also got the Bay Area Examiner Discord up where we got a lot of questions. So I'll throw some of those in there when they make sense. And I may even ask my own question.
All right. So here we go. Sports betting 101 minus 110. Haha. Hilarious, right? Collin Sherwin, CBOLC, certified beat the opening line closer. That is the goal. We want to beat the opening line. We want to get out there when it's there and get the numbers when they're still good. But we will get to that in a little bit here. First of all, let's talk about what this class will be and what it will not be. The basics of profitable sports betting in a regulated but not monopolized market. There's only going to be one quote unquote legal way to make a sports bet in the state of Florida. And that's going to be through the Hard Rock Bet app, which is, run by the Seminole tribe. Whether or not you're going to be able to bet, you have to either bet at the Hard Rock or not. That is still to be determined. We don't know at this point. So it's definitely a fluid situation. And that is something to keep in mind here. We will get to that as well. This class is only designed if you don't know what you're doing. If you're somebody with like 14 accounts and a Don Best account and you got ways to get money down and you're moving, every Monday you've got, your Zelle is sending you warnings. Are you sure you want to send that much money? This is probably not for you. This program is much more designed for the casual bettor, likes games, likes going to games, likes having a few bucks on a game, but would like to be profitable at some point, would like to actually make more money than they lose. That is the goal here. So that's what we're going to teach you how to do using a very, very limited set of resources. Now, let's all keep in mind here, having as many places to bet is a huge factor in being able to do this long-term profitably. If you are in the state of Florida right now, there's technically, again, that gray area of legal, but there's only one fully legal wagering outlet. Really hard to make a living on one fully legal wagering outlet. Basically impossible. So you're not going to be able to make any sort of money that's going to be life-changing or I'm going to quit my job money. But you can certainly pay for a couple dinners out. You can definitely find ways to be long-term profitable here. You can make money at this. Just don't think you're going to be able to, only using one app, transition into being a full-time sports bettor. But the information that you can get from using that one app can get you on a path towards more profitability using other markets and other things. And we'll discuss what a soft book is later in this process. So the language of sports betting. One of my favorite things about sports betting is that with the exception of professional wrestling, it is probably the best way to communicate how you feel or what you think, to any one of your friends or anyone you know, because the language of it is so deep and pure and relates things very, very easily. In wrestling, you've got heel, you've got face, you've got, double turn, terms like that really just sort of relate what you're looking for. Sports betting can do that as well. So I've just gone over like a few pages here of things that you may or may not be familiar with. So a bad beat, I think everybody knows what a bad beat is, or to some extent, which is you're there, you're going to win. And Pat Mahomes kneels on the 1 yard line instead of running the ball in the end zone. Kind of hit me this year, not going to lie. So when those things do happen, not great, and the bad beat segment from Scott Van Pelt. As a gambler, you can be at that 99% win expectancy, but until it actually hits 100, you're never actually fully in the house until you actually cash the check. Closing line value, and this is something that we're going to discuss a little bit later. Closing line value is the value of what you made your bet at and what the final consensus line was from all the bookmakers across the world. So you can bet on Sunday, Tuesday, Friday, doesn't matter. What is the closing line on Saturday, 30 seconds before kickoff or tip-off or the start of the game, and what value did you get based on where you bet or when you bet? That's closing value. We'll get into that a little bit more. Cover doesn't matter who wins or loses the game. It matters who wins against the point spread or against the total. That is a cover, or against a prop. Let's say you have, for example, this weekend, a prop I like a lot is Blake Corum over 73.5 yards rushing for Michigan against Penn State. If he goes over 73.5, you would say he covered the 73.5 yards. Favorite is the chalk. That goes back to Old English times. It's the same thing. I use chalk a lot. Good way to communicate what you're saying. A futures bet is just that, a bet for something that's going to happen in the future. The Super Bowl, who will win the Final Four, who will make it to the Final Four, et cetera, et cetera. If you're getting points, you're catching points, that means you have the underdog team. That means that if the spread is 4.5, you're getting 4.5 points. Conversely, if you are betting on the favorite, you are giving points or laying points. You would be laying those same 4.5 points if you were betting on the other side. And then the hook, death by hook. It's the worst thing in sports betting. The hook is basically that 1/2 point, the difference between 3 and 3.5, or 5 and 5.5, whatever that is. The hook is always a 1/2 point. Hedging is just taking one bet and then making a second bet to either lock in some profit or reduce some losses, just like hedging you would in the stock market or anywhere else. Juice or vig. Remember, when you're betting, if you bet $100, you bet $100, you're going to win $100. But if you lose, you're going to lose $110. That $10, that's the juice, that's the vig. That's how sportsbooks make their money. That's how these things stay open, and that's why they remain so completely profitable that multi-billion-dollar companies are springing up all across America to try and take advantage of that little bit of juice, just that little bit of every bet. It's enough to be a multi-billion-dollar company. Line shopping is just the art of looking at several different sportsbooks, finding the best number, finding the best line. We'll go into that very much in depth in this. Even though you're only going to have access to one sports book, the information that's out there is going to give you a really good idea of when you should and when you shouldn't bet. A middle, best thing in sports betting. You got +6.5 and you got -3. So the +6.5 bet and the -3 bet. All you do is you want that game to land 3, 4, 5, 6, and you're a winner on both sides of the bet. If you lose, you're going to win one bet and lose one bet. So that's okay. You pay the vig on the one bet and you'll cash out and the other two will cancel them out. But if you can hit that middle, that 3, that 4, that 5, that 6. So if you bet early in the week and you got +6.5 and you really like it, but now that line's down to 3, everybody's come to where you were on a game. Maybe you think 3 is a little too small. Maybe you would lay the -3 and then try and catch that right in the middle. Just looking for value, it's the best way to do it. Middles are fantastic when you can find them. Just don't make sure you're over middling yourself. And the other thing you want to keep in mind is, generally, if you're betted at 6.5 and it comes down to 3, your 6.5 is probably right. That's probably good. The 3 is going to be closer to right, but you should probably just ride it with the 6.5 instead of trying to catch a middle. A lot of times there's just enough value there. You don't want to cancel yourself out when you've already made a good bet. Money line is just a bet. Doesn't involve the spread. Who wins, who loses. That's it. Instead of point spread involved, you'll lay odds. So you might have to bet $200 to win $100 on one side of a game. And then on the other side of that game, if you bet $100, you would win $160 if your team wins. So just something to keep in mind there. Outright is when outright's very simple. When a dog doesn't just cover, but they also win the game outright. That is only for underdogs. Over, under, or total. Just most commonly, it's the bet made when the total on two teams. So, for example, we can look right here and see some totals for this week for college football. For example, the total on the East Carolina-Florida Atlantic game is 44.5. That means it is projected by the odds makers as of right now that both teams will combine to score 44.5 points. If you think they'll score more than that, both teams combined, and it's a final score of 30-25, 30-27, you'll bet over. If you think it'll be less than that, 14-10, you'll bet under. Parlays. It's going to be hard for people to accept, and Seth knows where I'm going here because he's heard me rant about this before. If you're trying to be a profitable sports bettor in the long term, and I'm always thinking about these things in the long term, every time you add a leg to a parlay, so a 2-teamer, 3-teamer, 4-teamer, 5-teamer, you are paying more and more vigorish to the sports book. independent outcomes are by far the best way to be long-term profitable. Now, I'm not going to be a spoiled sport here. If you sitting on your couch on a Saturday, you had a couple beers, you want to take a shot at making some real money, some big money, and you want to fire $20 and pick 6 games and pick a 6-game parlay and try and hit it for, what is that, like 25 to 1, something like that, 30 to 1. I don't even know because I don't do parlays. You are more than welcome to do that. That's fine. But just realize that you are specifically gambling. It's the same thing as that if you went to a casino and you threw dice up against a wall, or you spun the wheel, you played roulette, whatever. You are just simply gambling with your money, and you're paying a much, much higher vigorish than you would ever have to if you would just bet all 6 of those games individually. If you want to bet all 6 of those games individually, look at a thing called a round robin. Always a good opportunity to give you sort of that same parlay feel, but not with the terrible odds of a parlay. So keep
And
that
isn't most of the time, if you, let's say you want to bet, let's say you wanted to parlay a 3:00 game and a 7:30 game, or a 3:30 game and an 8:00 game, wouldn't you be better off just betting the first one, then take whatever you win and just roll it over in the second one? Isn't that a better value?
So let's say you bet $100. Yeah, let's say you bet $110 on the first game and you win. Then you'll have $210 to bet on the second game. You bet $210 on the second game. If you win that, that'll pay what, 190, 191, I think. No, a little less, 189. So then you'll have your 210 back plus 189. You'll be at 400. If you parlay those 2 games, you're paying 13 to 5. So for every $100 you bet, you win 260. So you make more money just betting them as independent outcomes. Continue to just bet more money as independent outcomes. It's definitely the way to go in the long run. Point spread, we know what a point spread is. Process. This is a very process-based thing. Know why you're doing what you're doing, why you made the move that you made, and we'll get into there's many ways to skin this cat. There's many different processes you can use, but try and figure out what's the best one that works for you. Prop bets, total rushing yards like I have for Blake Corum this weekend, 3-pointers made, total interceptions thrown, yada, yada, yada. A bet that generally doesn't correlate to who wins or who loses a game, but to an individual outcome. Could be total corner kicks in a soccer game, whatever that might be. Something you want to keep in mind with props is that generally, not always, but generally you're going to pay a little bit more vigorish on a prop bet than you would like a regular side or a total. Not always, but sometimes. NFL, sometimes you'll see a lot of -110 props out there. But a lot of, like, for example, I mostly specialize in college, obviously. And for me, it's a lot of, -115s on college sides, college totals. So keep that in mind. Pay a little bit more rake, pay a little bit more vig. You got to win a little bit more often to get to break even or to be a winner. Public team, a team generally listed, the public bet speaking, Alabama football, roll tide roll. They're going to win this week, of course. Right now, Michigan's a very public team because they're playing very well. The Dallas Cowboys are a public team. The LA Lakers are a public team. Just something to keep in mind. Sometimes you see a little half point. This is happening less and less now with more sharp sports bettors out there, and people willing to push those lines and push those lines in order. The big conglomerates out there making sports bets, and they're going to say, well, if the dumb public's going to, lay 10.5 on a Dallas game, on Cowboys game, I'll take the other side. And I'll take the 10.5 points because I only think it should be 9.
And this could happen in season. Like, those are kind of traditional ones, but this could happen in season as well. Colorado's, right, is a good example of that this year.
Massive. The sports books got killed on early Colorado action this year. When that TCU game was a disaster for sports books because they're taking the number based on what they thought it should be in their calculations. And basically, their power rankings before the season started. But the whole world is like, oh, Deion's here. They're going to win now. And at first, he very much did win. And he won big. And it absolutely murdered the book. Some of the handle on those early Colorado games far surpassed what you would see on even like a good NFL game, which is very, very rare. So the books absolutely got murdered. But they got a lot of Deion back. Games like Oregon were very, very good for the books, where everybody's still loading up on Colorado, and Oregon gets them back. Sharps, handicappers. Oh, excuse me, a push. Push is a tie, or as we say sometimes, push is a win. Depending on what side. If you got a little unlucky at the end, push is a loss. If you your team throws in the 3-pointer from half court as the clock expires, push is a win. So keep that in mind. But that a push just means a tie. All bets are fully refunded. You don't pay any rake. You don't pay any juice. It's just fully refunded to you at home. Sharps, handicappers that know what they're doing and are long-term winners. The sharp side of a game is the side most professionals are on. So you'll often see, This is a very, very general rule, does not always apply. But generally, sharps like underdogs. Because what happens is people go, oh, Florida State's playing Miami. Miami's terrible. Yeah, well, that's fine. 14 points. Who cares about the 14 points? They're going to win by 50. And that sets the market one way. And what happens is the sharps come in and they start betting on Miami. I use this as an example because Seth and I actually disagree this week, whereas he is saying
I appreciate you calling me a sharp.
You are
picking that terrible Miami team.
Taking that terrible Miami team. That will probably end up somewhere along the way. It might have to get to 16.5 or 17, but at some point, Miami would probably be the sharp side there. They're gonna have to move the line to get it there though. Whereas I would probably be the square better, taking the very public Florida State Seminoles at this point. But I still like it at 14. If it was 17, I wouldn't bet it, but at 14, I will. A teaser, a bet where you can buy points for a team. There are times when teasers make some sense. They are very, very rare. If anybody wants to go a little bit deeper here, Google Wong teaser, W-O-N-G. Basically, all the value has been taken out of those by the books at this point. But you can dive a little deeper and see that the sports books at one point on football were just giving away free money because they had set the prices of their teasers wrong when they fell into a certain area. Now those teasers have been taken back by the casinos a little bit. You're basically just buying points. In football, it's generally 6 points on a 2-team bet, 10 points for a 3-team bet. But remember, 6 points on a 2-team bet, well, that's less than a touchdown. So you're buying less than one full score every time you tease. And then you got to win 2 games instead of just 1. So keep that in mind. Teasers, usually favorable to the house, especially now. There was value on these back in the day. That's a little bit less so now.
Are you of the mind that teasers in college football, I've heard some people say it's too volatile to have that kind of, to play teasers in college football for the most part, except for in extenuating circumstances, maybe involving like a service academy or something.
I was just going to say, so if you want to find a teaser this week that I would, I haven't done any homework on this, but let's assume that at some point I do. Rutgers, Iowa. I'm seeing this right. I'm seeing ones right now. Okay. It is Iowa -1. This would not be the worst spot to tease it up and tease it down the same game. So you would buy Iowa -6, which would get them to -5. And then you would have Rutgers from +1 all the way up to +7. And as long as the score lands between Iowa -5 and Rutgers +7, which is highly likely in a game where first one to double digits wins, most likely, that's not a bad spot.
So, I was going to say the score might end up being 5-7.
It very well could be, and you'd be fine. That would be completely within your 12-point window of love there. So teasers generally in college football, not great. But again, academy games are great on this. I actually went back and did a little bit of research on when tease up, tease down works on the academy games. It didn't do as well as I thought. I went in with this hypothesis and then I tested it out, and it actually didn't test very well, but it's tested very well over the last few years. But a long-term sample, it's not that great. Iowa Northwestern, yes. Iowa this season, basically like every game, tease it up, tease it down. That kind of works. Very, very rare exception, though. And basically, you need a team like Iowa to make that work. Remember, these Big 12 teams that go up and down, what's 6 points? That's turnover. I mean, they're turning the ball over 3 and 4 times a game, and they're scoring, 7 and 8 touchdowns. It's not really worth much. But in a low-scoring game, it definitely has more value. Point spread, we pretty much know what a point spread is here. And then an underdog or just a dog, you will describe it as a dog. So let's go from here. So the plus and minus thing. Had a couple people reach out to me and go, what does plus mean? What does minus mean? So I'm just going to put this up as like one full sheet here. All money line bets. This is 2 separate things. For the part that's italicized and the part that isn't. All money line bets are based on $100 increments. So if you bet on a team at -180, you will need to bet $180 to win $100. Or you'll need to bet $18 to win $8. Or you'll need to bet $9 to win $5. You don't have to bet the full 100, but it has to be in proportion to that. So all what they call American odds, are based on the number 100. So 180 to win 100. The flip side of that is if you are a plus number generally indicates the underdog side. If you bet on a team at +160 because you think they're going to win outright, for every $100 that you'll bet, you'll win 160 and get your $100 back for every $100 that you bet if that team wins outright. So plus is a little harder to come by. For example, I think like USF men's basketball right now is like plus 4,000 to win the American Conference. Sounds about right to me. So for every $1 that you post, you'll win 40. For every $100 that you post, you'll win 4,000, and you'll get your money back. So you do get your $100 back on that as well. And again, on the minus 180. So if you bet 180 to win 100, when you win the 100, they do give you your 180 back as well. So keep that in mind when you're doing the math. You'll see, we've talked about the VIG already. When you see minus 110 next to a point spread or a total, that's the VIG. So if you bet USF minus 6.5, minus 110, that means you'll be betting on USF to win by more than 6.5 points. But you'll win $100 if you do that, if you bet 100 to win 110. But if you lose, you'll pay 110. So basically that $10, that's why casinos are pretty. That's why I have a job. Okay, is that $10 wiggle room in there, that little tax. That's how you lose. Now remember, the one way to avoid paying the VIG or the juice is to never lose. So just keep that in mind. If you never lose, you will never pay VIG or juice. It's only on losing bets. So just never lose. And you won't ever have to pay any juice or
Class over.
Class over. You're done. Moving along.
110 is that I could, just because we have people that are really not. 110 is the standard.
Yeah, 110 is what we minus 110 on both sides is what we would call standard juice. We're going to show a couple examples where our friends, the Seminole tribe, have actually added a little bit more to that and in ways that we don't necessarily like. But generally on for their college football and college basketball and NBA and NFL, all those games, they're basically minus 110. You might see in much more competitive states, such as Colorado, Pennsylvania, where there's not a monopoly, where you'll see multiple vendors available, Pennsylvania, where you might see on NFL games, if you bet Sunday morning before an NFL game, it might only be minus 105 on both sides or minus 106. So a lot of these more established markets give the bettor more value, but we're in Florida. We can't do that yet. So again, a competitive market is always going to be better for the wagerer, but that's not where we are. So we're going to play in the sandbox we've been given and do the best that we can with it. So how do you win? This is the easy part, right? Bet as early as possible to get the best possible line. Bet because the rest of the market is going one way. We're going to show you how to do that in a little bit. Find smaller markets, props, derivatives. Derivatives are, okay, so if the spread is 6.5 on a game and it's plus 6.5, well, maybe at 4.5, they've, instead of it goes from minus 110 at 6.5. Well, now you're only laying minus 4.5. Maybe they'll give you like plus 125, plus 130. Could be a little bit of edge in there, depending on how they calculate those derivative markets. Something to keep in mind. Definitely a little bit more advanced work that you'll need to do there, but it's a way to make money for sure. Know what you know and know what you don't know. And I think this is a really good example is going to be what happened today with Texas and Quinn Ewers. So the line, and actually we'll come back to that, but I'll show you how the line moved earlier today. But it was basically 10. It got down to like 9.5 against TCU this weekend. Texas is the favorite. And then about an hour before Steve Sarkisian's press conference, it ticked back up to 10 and then 10.5. And then about 45 minutes before his press conference, got to like 11. And then I got closer to like 12. And then as soon as he leaves the podium, it's at 12.5. And the reason is because he announced that Quinn Ewers is going to be the starter this weekend after his injury against TCU. So he is a player that has value. Thus, the line started to move. So if you knew this, if you knew Quinn Ewers was going to play, you would much rather bet Texas at minus 10 or less, minus 9, than at minus 12.5. But did you know when that line started to tick up, let's say you like TCU, that line ticks up to like 10.5, 11, you go, oh, that's 11. TCU at 11, that's a pretty good value. But did you factor in the fact that Quinn Ewers was now going to play? And finding that balance of the information versus the market, seeing who knows what, who knows where, that is the art. I have these models, I have all this math, I have all this stuff I do. Sometimes it's more art than science. And figuring out as that line starts to tick up, the first thing I thought of was, I guess Ewers was playing. I guess he's going to play. And then that announcement comes out and he is going to play. So keep those in mind. And the last thing is keep good records. I'll show you a little, I put together a little record sample to show people how I keep my records and how I differentiate everything from very, very early in this college basketball season.
Question
So,
on,
go.
would you like the smaller markets and then knowing what you know, would you say that's kind of also applicable to, let's say you're a huge USF football fan and you follow the American Conference religiously. Is that where you can find an edge betting those games
100%.
more than betting the big public games?
Yeah, I think there's definitely more edge if you're following a specific league very closely. I think there's been tremendous value on Temple this season, both ways. I think there's been amazing value on UTSA this season, both ways, both as bet against them and now very much bet on them. Yes, there is the closer you know something, the better. For me, I have a couple of specialties that I really look to. West Coast Conference, Mountain West Conference basketball are probably my bread and butter. Those are a little bit bigger leagues. Honestly, you'd almost rather be in like the big West streets. You know what I mean? Maybe a little Southland Conference, like the further the little Big Sky, like, especially if you're not betting limits, and I'm betting, we'll talk about unit shaming in a little bit, but I don't want to unit shame anybody, and I don't want to have people go, oh my God, he bets that much a game, and I don't want people to go, he only bets that much a game. So I'm not betting full limits. Now at some opens, I'm betting the full limit. I'm betting as much as they'll allow me when a game opens at some points. But like right before tip off, I'm not somebody who's just firing, 10K at a, standard Tuesday night college basketball game, 30 minutes before tip off. That's just not my level of bankroll. If it was, I wouldn't have a job. But I'm still able to bet, at opens, and so especially at some of the other shops when things open up, I'm able to get them for the full amount that they offer me. So yeah, does that make sense? Does that answer?
Yeah. I'm just trying to. I think that's something that I've noticed just following USF a lot closer. That the last 4 or 5 years, that I don't think the market is as efficient for
100%.
the G5 conferences as it is for the Power. So like if you wanted something to really dig into,
yeah,
I think one of those conferences would be a good place to start.
The MAC is a little bit tougher just because the lines come out a little bit earlier and everybody bets MAC football. A lot of these groups are betting MAC football because it is, they've got the whole window to themselves on Tuesday and Wednesday night. But if you specialize in the Sun Belt in football or Mountain West or something like that, you'll have an edge a lot of times on the opener. Seth, what game was it that we talked about 2 days ago where I said it opened 9 and it's now like 14.5?
Rice, UTSA.
Rice, yes.
Because if you knew JT Daniels was probably not going to play, and once it was confirmed, it went from 10.5 to 14.5 really quick.
And if you were sitting in the Circa Sportsbook when they opened that number at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on Sunday morning, you could have fired. I believe their full limit on open for a game like that is 3 dimes. You could have gotten 3,000 down at -9. Now it's 14.5, I believe, correct? Last I saw, it was like 14.5.
That would be what you call closing line value.
That is a massive amount of closing line value. If you get 9 and it closes 14.5, you are, I'm going to rough guess this here. I've got some tools that I can show you later that'll give you the right number, but I would say that's probably like 68% to hit, which is really good. And we'll get to those numbers that you need in just a minute. Cheap and free tools for winning. A craftsman is no good without his tools. So assuming that you are in the state of Florida and you really only have one outlet to bet, buying all of this fancy software and crazy stuff and models that I've got is really not going to do you a lot of good. It's going to be a waste of your time. But here's some free stuff that's out there that's available. One is Wager Talk and the other is Spank Odds. Wager Talk is a free website that updates lines from across the world. Spank Odds does the same thing, but is much better. Now, these track the lines on a slight delay. I believe Wager Talk's delay is 10 minutes and Spank Odds is 5. Spank Odds is a program that you'll have to download. They have paid options as well that give you instant feedback on the odds. So I think Spank Odds does it like there's a 5-minute delay for free, a 2-minute delay for like $80 a month. And then if you want instantly, like the line changes in Vegas and it changes on your screen immediately. I think it's like $600 a month or $5,000 a year. I have used all of these products. They're fantastic. So, Seth, and I'm going to show the folks what an Spank Odds looks like here, if I possibly. This is Spank Odds. This is a program that you can download. It is free. You will get the occasional pop-up ad that pops up here, but this is basically every line in the world, pretty much for every college football game that'll happen this weekend, or tomorrow night if you want North Texas SMU. So what this does here is it also tells. Now remember, this is on a 5-minute delay, and speed kills here. So by the time you see something, by the time you go to bet it, especially in a 5-minute delay, it very likely will be gone. But this is a great way to see where the market is and to see where you want to be. So, for example, let's just randomly take this Vandy, South Carolina game. So at right here, the open at BetCris, which is one of the smartest sports books in the world, was 14. It is now the best line available is South Carolina minus 13.5. But if you go back to BetCris, it is at 14. Pinnacle, another very sharp sports book, is at minus 13.5. Circa is at 14. Low Vig, which is a form of bet online, minus 13.5. The Hard Rock app, which we have now added here, has it minus 13.5, minus 15. So you'd have to pay 115, or you'd pay minus 115 instead of minus 110 on this game. And that's because they don't quite want to go to 14 if they don't have to. They think they have a better edge offering plus 13.5 on Vanderbilt at minus 105 and South Carolina at minus 13.5, minus 115. They would rather do that than give it as 14 and make it 14 and 110 on both sides. DraftKings has the same game at 14 minus 108. Caesars, New Jersey, 14, yada, yada, yada. And you can see all the way down. Now, the other thing about this software is it also tells you what the best line is available right now, depending on where you are. So you can set this for various different ways. But right now, it looks like the best spread number available is South Carolina minus 13.5, minus 101 at Pinnacle. The best total is going to be at Low Vig, which is over 57.5, minus 103. And considering there's some 58s out there in the streets right now, 57.5 at Low Vig is with a very low amount of juice is fine. And then the best money lines are going to be plus 455 at Low Vig and minus 525 at Circa. So it gives you all of the information that you would need 5 minutes after you actually need it. If you get these things in real time, but it'll give you a good idea of where the market is for a game. So for example, if you have the Hard Rock here at 13 minus 115, I don't really like this specific game using the Hard Rock betting app. 7.5 here, not great. You see these bests out here. You can also scroll down and use these boxes here. So you can pay over 49.5 minus 115, which means the under 49.5 would only be minus 105 here in Virginia Tech, Boston College, next to this highlight. That might be a play that you might want to make because you're getting the extra half point. And of course, 49 is a key number because it is 7 touchdowns, 2.5 here, yada, yada, yada. So you can see these little boxes here. It's a great tool. It's on a 5-minute delay, but it'll give you a great sense of where the market is. Also, when the game is over or it gets very close to tip off, you'll know exactly where, because all of these lines will very much start to coalesce 5 and 10 minutes before a game starts. So you'll see pretty much straight across the board, everybody will have the same number or very, very close to it. Does that make sense, Seth?
Yes.
Okay. So there's another one called Wager Talk that is web-based. Let me see if I can pull that up right now. You don't want to download any software. This works just fine as well. And you can see their totals right now for the games that are currently happening. And then some of the other books out here. Again, Hard Rock is not one of these available books for free at Wager Talk, but it'll tell you, tickets and also bet splits. We'll get into bet splits in a little bit. But here, this is actually pretty good. So you can see that SMU opened as a minus 15 favorite, 15.5. It's pretty much 17 across the board now as it continues to go up. And then where is that? Yeah, Miami's at now. It opened 15. It's down to 14. I think it's going to kick back up to 15. Seth disagrees with me.
I think it very well. I think it'll depend on. It seems like those Florida State receivers are probably going to play. So That could be a good thing to watch. If you see that line start to creep up, that probably means those guys are playing, and may even mean that Tyler Van Dyke is not playing.
So let me do one thing here with the UTSA line that we were talking about. So where Circa had the 9, right? So here, Rice UTSA, we can click on it right here. Oh, actually, I'm gonna have to drag that over from the other screen because somebody's popped up over there. You can see the history of the line here, and it opened indeed at 9, and has just instantly within, it looks like the first minute it was available, it went to 11 at $3,000 because all the sharp bettors were like, oh, 9? Here, shut up and take my money, Circa. We'll be more than happy to bet very heavily on UTSA to make that -9, now -11, 12, 14. Dips back down, goes back up. And
so we went to 12 in 20 minutes, basically. Looking at that.
It went from 9 to 12 in 20 minutes. Yeah. The problem is, of course, since we are trying to do this here only in the state of Florida, and we are focused on the state of Florida only, we're not going to be able to get these lines because the Hard Rock is going to wait until these markets are a little bit more established. Yeah. And so you're going to have to do most of your betting a little bit later. That is unfortunate, but there's still plenty of opportunity out there. So keep that in mind. So those are great tools. I think they're the best tools out there that are free. If you want to actually do the work on a league like the West Coast Conference or the Mountain West, for college football, there's some free tools out there. SP Plus is obviously one that Seth and I are very familiar with from our podcast. It's a good one. FPI, ESPN's FPI. I think that's not quite as great a tool. I think it wiggles a little too much, but again, it's better than nothing for sure. The Massey Peabody, I think, works better for NFL than it does for college. I still kind of think SP Plus of all the models that I've seen is still a little bit of the best. Although I think SP Plus can be a little slow to adjust early in the season. By about week 6, week 7, I think it's by far the best. For college basketball, everyone uses KenPom. There's other rating systems out there, and you can, buy a Synergy account, and there's some other, ways out there you can spend a lot of money. Or you can just give KenPom $20 a season. Yeah. It's the best value in all of sports betting by far. Remember, college basketball is not a market that these sports books really want to offer. They don't make a lot of money on college basketball. And so, again, if you're not familiar with KenPom, let me see if I can switch that here. Yeah. And this is, basically everything you need. Adjusted offense based on opponent, adjusted defense based on opponent. We can go to Purdue. I believe they've played a game already, haven't they? Oh, this is last year. What did they have last year? Sorry. And this is, they played Samford and they won 98-45. They're the number 1 team projected in the country in offense. They're number 9 in defense. Basically, and I'll tell you this, quite honestly, I'm going to bet that when this line opened here for this game, Purdue against Morehead State tomorrow night. So it was -26. It looks like it's the projected number here, 85-59. So that is a total of 144 and a spread of 26. I'm going to go to my software here that I haven't shown you guys yet. So at DraftKings, it opened at 26.5 and total 138. So it will, this software is like truly powerful and amazing because it just gives you basically, it spits out a number, and that's the number the sports books are going to start with. So for college basketball, KenPom is just a massive part of betting. What you'll want to do is find where KenPom is wrong. Did a player return from injury that really has made a difference for that team in the past? KenPom might not calculate that in, and then you'll have a little bit more of an edge. Is a team just breaking the wrong way, underperforming expectations? Kentucky last year was a very good example of that. They just, their KenPom numbers were fantastic, and then you'd watch them play and you go, why is this offense so stagnant? They can't move, and they're not really playing that hard on defense. You would bet against Kentucky based on the numbers. So you would see what that number is, and you can get a pretty good idea what the opening spread's going to be for a game, and you can just sort it by day. Friday's already up, but we can go to Saturday already, and we can see Kent State 70-68 against Fresno State. I will bet that Fresno State will be a 2-point underdog, and the total will be right around 138 when that game opens tomorrow about 1:00. Okay. Tools for winning. Beat writers. Shout out to Kelly and Tulsa. You made me a lot of money over the years. I appreciate you. A lot of the athletic writers, get an athletic subscription. Follow them. They've been very, very good to me. official team injury reports. We're getting more injury reporting in college sports than we ever have. It's more accurate than it's ever, but still, caveat emptor. These are coaches that don't really have consequences if they lie on the injury report. Until those consequences become a real thing, take it with a grain of salt. Last year, great example of that, Jelly Walker at UAB, nation's leading scorer. Some nights he played, some nights he didn't. Some nights we just watched his warm-up and tried to figure out if he was going to go. If he was going to go, bet UAB. If he doesn't go, bet against UAB. Sometimes these things are really that simple. It's not always that black and white, but sometimes it really can be that simple.
This is big. Kyle Whittingham is a big offender here.
Yes, extremely big. But like you just
understand that what guys. Some guys are more truthful than others, so that's a good thing to know. Who kind of is more consistently giving out the information. And Kyle Whittingham said that Rising was practicing he's going to play, and then 2 weeks ago, he's out for the season. So
yeah, I mean, kind of stuff. I mean, the Lightning did it too. They got us sold by season tickets, and then they said Vazzy's out for like 2 months. Yeah, I mean, it happens. You just already have to go with the best you got. Bet splits. Be aware. It's just how much money has been bet on a team, and then how many bets have been made. Basically, the sharp side is generally considered because the bigger money players are considered the sharper players. If a team has a whole bunch of money on it, and not a lot of total tickets, not a lot of individual physical bets. So like the average bet is higher on the team, on one side of the team with a lower total number of actual bets. That's probably something that you would consider the sharp side. You can always take a look at this. I'll show you a VSiN screen before we get out of here, and how VSiN puts out bet splits. It can be an overrated tool, but it's one to be aware of. I think for our purposes, though, with only one book available, I don't think it's massive.
And it's again, you often see it percentage of bets and then percentage of handle, right? Is the money associated with those bets?
Correct. Percentage of bets, percentage of handle. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to use one of these expensive tools. So you see unabated, spent God's paid, Don Best, only if you really have a lot of outs. But let's see if we can leverage any of that right now to try and make a little bit of money while we're sitting here. So it's 7:52, where there's going to be some 9 o'clock college basketball games tonight. So I'm going to see if I can, and I'm going to use a tool called Unabated, which I used to pay for myself, and then I got work to pay for it, which is the best part.
How is the free version of Unabated? How is that compared?
I think it's completely fine. It's I would compare it to a Don Best, especially with the time delay. Doesn't really make a huge difference. Fine. All right, here we go. So we're going to actually try and make a bet. We'll change our password later. So so here we take a look and we see these games that are open. We're going to pass the games that are actually happening right now. We're going to try and go straight to college basketball that has not started. We're going to go past all of these games. We're going to go right here. Unabated works in real time. So these lines that you're seeing here are actually being updated as we speak right now. And I have it set for time order just as they do here. So you can see like there's a wow, I don't know what the hell just happened there. I've never seen 41 before. That's very bizarre. North Alabama, the best line available is a -10 right now. It is 11.5 right here. So we're going to want this Alabama A&M 11 plus 11.5. All right. We're just going to take it. Done. Okay. Out the door.
There you go.
You know what I mean? Just like grab it, see what the best line is, see that you have the other side of it here. You're getting +1.5 on the other side. Ship it. Sometimes it's really that easy. Basically, I'm just looking at what the best line is available and comparing it to the Hard Rock line. Problem with this software is, unfortunately, Hard Rock is not one of the available options. So I'm just looking at what the natural line here is, which is their best, and then trying to go against it.
All right, so you've got kind of the consensus line, or just the best available is what you're going off of on Unabated?
Best line is I want to beat the best line. That's what I want. So like I want to see if I see a 16 here, I could be the other side could have an here's a 17.5, but it's a +1 and it's a plus, so if you went the other side of this 16, there's a 17.5 on the other side, you just fire it. Yeah. You just want to basically get where there's a little bit of hold here. The unabated line is the neutral line. This is what theoretically the line should be.
Okay.
So you could just fire right down here. Cal State, Northridge, Idaho. Do 2.5. 2, no value there. Portland State. And remember, you're just going to be scrolling and looking all the time. What we're doing right now is called top-down betting. We're using the rest of the market to bet a game here because we feel like the rest of the market, we catch a dead line over here, we can grab it. Okay. That's generally the best way to go. If you can find ways to do this, just compare back and forth, see where the market is, see where you are, and try and grab the best of it. This one here, there's a best line now in the New Mexico. Now, actually, this is a game I've for my handicapping side, I kind of like tonight. And I like New Mexico, but the buyback is coming on New Mexico right now. So I would rather have plus 6.5 with New Mexico against St. Mary's. Again, West Coast Conference being one of the things that I cover a little more than most. So I kind of like the New Mexico plus 6.5 here at Bookmaker. But it looks like somebody is coming back to earth here. And I'm not sure what book that is. It's not one that I'm from. Oh, Sport Trade. Sport Trade is a different type of book. So that's the best number available is at 6.5, but it's mostly 6.5s across the board. And you would probably want to be more in that neighborhood if you possibly can. Unabated is going to have it 6 for sure. Yeah, 6.5. So yeah, does that make sense? You're just trying to grab where the market is, see where Hard Rock is slow and beat them. That's called top-down betting. Yeah. Okay.
There you go.
Here it is, top-down betting. What we just did, see where the market is and then just firing a bullet. That's top-down betting. Did I get a ton of value there for a 1.5 between 10 and 11.5? No. Is it probably like 1% to my favor? Maybe a little less than 1%? Yes. You know what? And I'll fire at 1%. 1% is all I need. 1%, 2%. It's great. They're not all going to be what I'll show you later, a bet that I had earlier this week. They're not all going to be UTSA at 9 and then it closes 14.5. They're not all going to be that good. You're really pushing small edges here. That's kind of what you're trying to do. Bottom-up betting. Creating your own source of data using models, data, and price to establish the correct price. That's more what I do, which is like, I think this number should be this based on this data that I have, based on my following this program. The one thing I would say about bottom-up betting, 1 second. Perfect. How'd that go? There we go. That pop-up bet went away. One of the things that for bottom-up betting, that's mostly what I do is take things from the bottom and try and figure them out. Give everything, and this is my best advice. I tried to fight this forever and do it more in feel and assign a point value to everything. What is Quinn Ewers being back for Texas worth to that team? 2.5 points over Malik Murphy? 3 points? 5 points? 1 point? You need to assign that value yourself and use that in your handicapping. So if you're going to build models and you're going to, start with a base of information, start with SP plus, start with FPI, whatever it is. I use a little combination of all of them that like averages it out and weights a little more heavily towards SP plus. Start there and then assign why you think each player. Sometimes it's going to be matchup. Sometimes a team that's really good against the run will play a team that really likes to run the ball. And you'll need to establish how much more is that defensive front worth against a run-heavy team than it is against a pass-heavy team. Assign a numerical value to everything. That is the only thing that I'm going to encourage you. And find your price. And then you figure out what your price is. And then if you see the price that you like somewhere else, go ahead and bet it. And sometimes that price will be the other way. Sometimes you might be like, oh, I like a team at plus 13. But then you only see a minus 8 out there. Maybe you bet the -8 because you think the game's going to finish right around 10, 11. Maybe you bet the -8, even though you were planning on betting the plus 13. So keep that in mind. Numbers you need to know. Write this down, screenshot this, do whatever you got to do. Break even for all these -110 bets. Break even, 52.39%. That's it. So you got to get 52.4% to be a long-term winner if you're paying the -110 VIG. If you can find some other places, some specials, props, whatever else the Hard Rock might be giving out as specials, it's only -105. It drops to 51.19%. That's break even. Remember, you only need a point or point and a half to be profitable. And I think we just showed that with the game that we just bet. It's all you need. Point and a half It's all it takes. Okay. If you're consistently betting a point and a half ahead, basketball, and I'm talking only basketball and football here. If you're betting a point and a half, you're going to be good in the long run. Some points are clearly worth more than others. 3 is the most important point. Ironically, also in college basketball, but at even a less level than it is in college football. In college football, if you have a line if you have plus 3.5 and it closes plus 3, you have about 6.81% of value. If it opens 2.5, closes 2.5 and you have 3.5, you have 12.35% of value. So for every $1,000 you bet, you should win $123. That's pretty good. So keep that in mind when you're betting. The 3 is always key number. Some numbers, the difference between, 24 and 25, marginal. 3, huge. Each point has a specific value. If you guys want to, we'll do that in a more advanced class. But as a general rule, I remember a general rule is basically the closer it is to 0, the more each point has value, obviously. And in football, the key numbers 3, 6, and 7 are all ones to keep an eye on. 10 and 14 also have more value than 11 and 15. But keep that in mind.
Is 8 starting to gain value with more teams going for 2?
Yeah, and you know what? It's so funny because a lot of the models still haven't caught up on teams doing the smart thing, especially on opening touchdowns, and going for the 2. Because as soon as I don't know what anybody else got, but I call it off script. You see a lot of academy games; they never basically get off point script, which is going for that 2 early or going for 2 in a weird spot. You don't see that a lot in like academy football, but like in the Big 12, happens all the time. They're 8, 8.5. The difference between 8 and 9 in a Big 12 game has more value than it does in an academy game, for sure. So keep that in mind. But that is a more advanced level, and we'll get to that at some point. Questions to ask after making a bet to see if you got value. Did you beat the closing line? So that 11.5, I bet, when we go back in an hour, is it going to be 10? If it's 10, I'm happy. If it's 9.5, I'm happy. If it's 11.5, I probably set $40 on fire. That's okay. But over the long run, it'll work out as samples. If you didn't get value, did I know something that led me to believe I was smarter than the rest of the market, or did I just make a random bet? Be honest with yourself. Do some analysis. Dig a little bit deeper. See what you can find. If you did get value, was it because I knew something the rest of the market didn't? Bottom up and correctly established a more correct price? Or did I just do what I did here, top down, saw where the market was and made a bet on the other side? We'll see. If the answer to either of the above is yes, then your process is good. And if your process is good, just continue to do that over and over and over until you own a sports team. This is what we're trying to do here. Just keep doing that. Do what you're good at. Continue to do that. I'm good at openers in the West Coast Conference. I will continue to bet openers in the West Coast Conference. That's a good side for me. Sharp books. You want to be where the sharp books are. You don't want to be where the square books are. Some of these are offshores. Bookmaker, BetOnline/LaVig, Circa. Circa is probably the sharpest book regulated onshore in the United States. I would say I don't think there's even much debate about that. Pinnacle is a market-based service over in England. Basically, it's kind of like a stock trader. Somebody sets a stock market and people buy both sides of it. Very, very low rake, and a really good tool. Those are really the sharp ones. Some of these more fun books, BetMGM. Bovada is an offshore, but I would consider them very recreational as well. Caesars, ESPN Bet, FanDuel, they're fine. I would definitely put the Hard Rock into that square book category. That means there's opportunities for sharp players to make some money. It's a lot harder to make money against the sharp books than it is the square ones. So keep an eye out. There's going to be opportunities to make money at the Hard Rock. Some of the things I've seen so far definitely believe there's going to be value here.
Circa they are kind of they set the openers in college football, don't they? They're kind of the standard there.
Yeah, pretty much for college football, and DraftKings has really been opening so far this season in college basketball. The openers have all come from DraftKings this year, which has been really nice to see. A lot of movement. They're putting numbers up, and they're definitely they're taking what they call taking the hit, which is they're letting the sharp players bet into them. They're establishing the price that they think is right. They're using that information to establish the price that's correct, and then they're starting to balance a little bit more. So, I'll keep an eye on DraftKings at the openers. Hard Rock has definitely been launching late on college basketball. So generally, if a game, a Friday game today's, so tomorrow's games for college basketball, we're starting to post it 1:15. I want to say 1:15 this afternoon, give or take, between 1 and 2 o'clock. And then if I go here, I can tell you. Actually, I can't tell you what time Hard Rock because I closed that window. But Hard Rock has definitely been like mid to late afternoon, even for the bigger college basketball games. So keep that in mind. The lines will be a little bit more hammered out when you get them for college basketball. About courtside, a lot of people ask me out there, they're just like, oh, well, I'll just go to the USF game and I'll sit there and like before the guy makes the free throw, I'll know it went in before the sports book will, and I'll just make the bet and I'll win all the money. Well, you're not the first person to think of that. But congratulations on thinking that you're a genius. Yes, it's possible. Yes, it can be done. I'm going to give you a somewhat morbid example here of how it could be done. When Mackenzie Milton went down and clearly got carted off the field in that game several years ago, which is still just, breaks my heart to have seen that in person. That was an opportunity where if you're sitting there in the stands, and it's a morbid one, but it's like, yeah, I should probably bet on USF now because that kid's not coming back in. If you see a major injury to a key player while you're sitting at the game, use that information. Don't be afraid. That's okay. That's allowed. You're not cheating. But trying to do things like in an instant while you're sitting, you would think it would work better than it would, but it really doesn't. And these sports books have gotten so good. I was at a Biloxi Shuckers AAA game, AA, in July. And I saw one outlet had live betting on minor league baseball. I'm like, well, this has to be like, there's no way this is good, right? There's a crack of the bat. The line changed like before the ball got back to the pitcher. Like, it's just amazing how good they have gotten, even at like the smallest sports that they're tracking to keep on top of these things. So yes, keep courtsiding is possible. It does happen. There are opportunities. I would say instead of trying to stay ahead of the play, though, keep an eye on the strategy or what you're seeing and more holistically look at a game than trying to like jump out ahead of something while you're at a sporting event. Yes, your TV feed is delayed. Even like the live feed, if you have a TV antenna, you're definitely ahead of the people that are on DirecTV, who are ahead of the people that are using YouTube TV or DirecTV Stream or Roku or Fubo or whatever it is. So you're ahead of the streamers if you're using DirecTV. DirecTV is behind like the antenna, but you're all still behind actually watching the game in person. Even the live feed, generally, especially now because they've built in the 7-second delay in most games. So generally, even like the quote live feed is still, 7 to 10 seconds behind. So keep that in mind. And remember, if you're going to live bet games, and we encourage live betting, I'll show you that in a minute. VIG is generally 115 instead of 110. So you need to win more. 53.5 is break even instead of 52.39. Okay, good. Moving on. Mm-hmm. Okay. About betting in Florida today, we'll go real quick here. Avoid futures bets for now until this thing gets totally worked out in court. I say this as somebody who had a Kansas win total football bet canceled on them 2 years ago for a not insignificant amount of money. They just went, oh, the app shut down and here's your money back. But they just got to win one more game and I cash. And even I think I might have actually already covered the win total, but they don't pay it out until the end of the season. And then they just refunded me. I forget what happened exactly, but I was pissed. So until the Florida State Supreme Court says this is A-okay, you're fine, don't make any futures bets. I would feel very comfortable betting on tonight's game, next week's game, yada, 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 whatever. It's fine. Short-term outcomes, you're going to be fine. Don't bet on who's going to win the Super Bowl. Don't bet who's going to win the Stanley Cup. Hold off on those for just a little bit here until the Florida State Supreme Court gives full approval. Watch for the VIG squeezes. So Couple of things that I've noticed, and I don't want to screen share because we've done that enough already. But here's a couple of things that I noticed tonight. And I just went through the Hard Rock app by myself and picked a few. Here we go. So in the Islanders Bruins game tonight, and on all NHL games, the puck line or the puck total was 5.5. So in the Islanders Bruins game tonight, it was, if you went over 5, it was plus 100. If you went under 5.5, over 5.5 plus 100, under 5.5 was minus 125, not minus 120 like it should have been. Grabbing a little bit of extra juice there. Keep an eye on it, especially on NHL. It looks like the Hard Rock app does that a little bit more than most. Another one that I saw where they're squeezed me a little was, Wyoming UNLV football for tomorrow night. Money line. So the spread and the total were both minus 110. That's fine. But the total for UNLV was minus 225 and on the money line. And then Wyoming was plus 175. Generally, you'd rather see that at like plus 2. If it's minus 225, you want to be getting at least plus 180 on the other side. Not a super crime here. Maybe I would hope for 185. 180 would be okay. 175 is a little thin, so just keep that in mind. They're squeezing you a little bit more where they can. Another one, Indiana, Illinois, for football this weekend was minus 260 on Illinois money line, and it was plus 200 on Indiana to win outright. Keep an eye peeled there. They're squeezing you where they can.
Is that just a situation where before you make a bet there, just check another book like you showed us before and kind of see the comparable, and if it's way off, it may not be worth it, right?
For sure, exactly. You don't necessarily need to, don't give them, if they're going to hang bad numbers, if they're going to hang numbers that aren't advantageous to the player, don't bet them. You know what I mean? Make them come to you. Even though there's only one book in the market, I always say, like, if you're playing at a 000 roulette wheel, I don't play roulette, but like if you're walking through the casino and you see people with the 000 roulette wheel, grab them. Excuse me, do you know there's a 000 roulette wheel right next door? And then maybe if everybody stops playing the 000 roulette, they'll start putting more 000 roulette out there, which is better for the player. Or if you're playing blackjack and you're playing at the 6-5 table, your friends are, get out of there and go play the 3-2 table. Better odds for the players, what you're looking for. So try and force them to do that where you can. Take advantage where you can. How do I keep records? All right, let me pull up my sheet here. All right, so I'm going to show how I document my bets. These are from earlier this week, college basketball opening night. Coppin State against Virginia Tech was under 144.5. The reason I saw that is I caught a dead line at a sportsbook somewhere, and I caught a dead one. This was a top-down bet. As you can see over here, I noted this as a top-down bet. I saw where the market was. I saw where I was. The game closed at 139. So I was under 144.5. Closing number was 139. Woohoo! Go, Collin. Yes, sir. One small problem. I lost. Okay. Don't worry about that. Process over outcome. My process was good here. I don't care about the outcome. It's fine. So spread total money line, hit the total, it was good. I document, but this is how I document. This was the game. This was the date. This was what I bet. The period. I bet the full game. I didn't bet a half or a quarter or anything like that. I bet the full game. Here's the price I paid. There's the book. I've never heard of that book before. I don't even know where that comes from. Spread total money line. I bet total. Oh, here. The outcome was a loss, and this was a top-down type of bet. I was watching the Baylor-Auburn game, and I went, my God, that freshman for Baylor is really good. And I know that was not calculated into, especially because it came off the bench, that was not calculated into the factor of the game. So in the middle of the game, I saw a Baylor minus 1.5 line against Auburn, and I went, that looks yummy. I was behind, I think, at the under 4 timeout. But as expected, Baylor closed on like a 13-0 run, give or take, somewhere in there. Comfortable win here. So here's the bet. I made Baylor IG, meant it was an in-game bet. Don't know why that says. Oh, I know why that says that. Spread. I bet against the spread here. Doesn't matter where it closed because it was an in-game bet. I was betting based on what I saw. So took an opportunity there, and that was a winner. So that was a sight bet. Saw it, bet it. Doesn't always work. Works this time. Going to work more than it doesn't. And on this one, you'll notice I also paid minus 120. I did not pay minus 115. I thought even at minus 120, I thought this had value. So remember, I got to win a lot more of these. I got to win like 54, 55% of the time here to be break even. And obviously I want to win more than that to win money. This is one where I had done some work early in the season on the Big West. I really like the University of California, Irvine to do a lot of overs this year. Played San Jose State. Game was 48 points at halftime. You go, oh, Jesus, well, I just set that money on fire, didn't I? And then they came out in the the second half, third quadrant of the game. I do these things in quadrants when I'm lining them up. And I go, oh, well, okay, we're fine. And then both teams like decided out of the halftime to do fine. I think I covered this by like a ton. I think it was actually ended up being like 138, 137, somewhere in there. So the price was minus 110. I don't know why the book says that's wrong, but the total, it closed at 129.5. So I only got a half point of value here, but I was doing this as a bottom up better because I was handicapping it. And so that's fine. So there. And then I just take all this and then I throw it in for the win. So does that make sense? This is how I document everything. And then at the end of the season, we got a thing down here, like adds them all up for us and tells us how much money we made.
I like it.
Okay.
Let's get to. Are you ready to get to a few questions here?
Fire. Go. We're late anyway, and I went too long.
All right, so a couple of these are probably going to be quick answers because you've already answered a little bit. But we got a question in the Discord. What stats are primarily used to decide if a line, in your mind, what do you kind of use to decide if a line's too high or too low? And then what makes you pull the trigger on that bet?
I do it based on two things, some top down or bottom up. If I believe a line opened badly, UTSA at 9, then I'm just going to fire it blindly because I think that market will go up the one way, irrelevant of what I think. I just think the market priced a number wrong, and I'm going to bet it that way. Games as we get a little bit closer in the week, then I start doing some digging and I go, oh, I don't think the market might be factoring this in, or this is a part of this game, or this player is in, or this player is out, and then you dig a little bit more. So it's a little bit of both. It depends on whether I'm working top down or bottom up.
And you mentioned for college football, you use kind of a mix of SP plus, Massey, FPI, and those don't factor in injury. So that's why Collin was saying earlier, you need to kind of decide what the point value is for each injury, because Texas last week against Kansas State, all those lines didn't factor in that Quinn Ewers wasn't playing. So then you got to go and decide yourself, what is that worth to me?
Correct.
All right. In-game betting strategies. Anything you like to? Do you have any strategies in game just besides this looks out of whack, or is there anything you like to look for? I know some guys like in college football, or if an explosive offense gets down with a turnover too early, maybe jump on them, that kind of thing. What do you like to go with?
Yeah, so the turnovers thing, generally, I think that's a really, really good indicator. Turnovers are, if you basically factor out, turnovers, you'll do fine. If you just use power ratings and factor out turnovers, I think you'll be in pretty good shape. Doesn't always work. Some of us loved Air Force last week. And then they turned the ball over 6 times and lost by 20 as a 20-point favorite. So it's not 100% effective. Something to keep in mind. Coaching, a massive, massive, massive part of in-game betting. Okay. There are basketball coaches you want to bet on in-game, and there are basketball coaches you want to bet against in-game. Matt Painter, I want to thank Matt Painter for my house. Okay. Betting against Purdue basketball in tight and close situations, I have a home. Okay. There are coaches. Mario Cristobal is getting to that point. Okay. Betting against Mario we're getting there. Okay. He is an in-game disaster. Just fire unders. Just fire the under. He's gonna. When they punt into Miami Clemson game, I didn't have it because I was out to dinner with some friends. I'm like, oh, I wish I had an app in front of me so I could fire the under. There's no way he's gonna score again. He's gonna run the ball 3 times and punt. That's what they're gonna do. Knowing those things, that. You watch football. Okay. The algo doesn't always know that. The algorithm that's setting those lines doesn't know that. Keep that in mind. You sometimes very much know more than the algorithm, especially in coaching decisions. Keep that. Some guys, I'm so reliable. Sonny Dykes until the season has been fantastic for me. But I will say this: in the pros, you generally want to be betting more on somebody. You want to bet good teams because everybody's good. So you want to bet on great, or somebody who's just better than the other. In college, you're gonna make more money betting against bad teams. You do better betting against teams than you are on teams in college, generally. Something to keep in mind.
What would you advise people do with their $100 free bet? Or what strategies maybe for that $100 free bet that you may get with the Hard Rock app?
Max the value. So max the value. I would bet an underdog money line. Now, normally I would say bet a futures bet. I'd say like, USF look great tonight in basketball, 40-1 to win the American Conference. Sure, go for it. You want to do it as a plus value. You want to get as much value out of it as possible. I would just find a money line underdog, and I would fire that. But get the most value out of it. Take a rip. You know what I mean? And if you don't win the first one, when you get the second one back, make it an even money bet and hope you can get even. Okay. What do we call gamblers who win every day? They're called liars. Okay. You're going to lose. It's going to happen. You're going to not worry about individual days, individual bets. Pat Mahomes slide, UTSA taking 30 yards of UTSA on 3rd and goal, covering by extremely comfortably with 2 minutes left. And all I got to do is run the ball 2 yards, put it away. And they take 30 yards and unsportsmanlike penalties and then play prevent defense with a 3-score lead and cut you. It's going to happen. That's okay. Process over outcome. Don't worry about it. But if you think you're going to win every day, you're not. You're going to lose. You can have a lot of losing days. The goal is to just have more winning days and more losing days and win more than you lose when you do lose. Be honest with yourself. Self-honesty is your only chance of success. Figure out what you're good at. If you keep betting in-game and you keep losing in-game bets, there's probably a reason. You know what I mean? Maybe that's not good. If your bottom-up process, keeps giving you these outcomes, your model is X and it just doesn't work. That ain't good either. Don't do that. If your top-down process, if you're getting in, you keep doing top-down bets and they're not working, maybe you're doing something wrong there as well. So just be honest about yourself and document everything, and it'll help you with that. Sample size matters, though. Don't beat yourself up if you go on a 2-8 run or 2-12. It happens, not often, hopefully. 2-12 a lot, but you don't want to, you don't want to have bad runs, but it will take hundreds and hundreds. Some people say it's 500. Some people say it's 1,500. And that gets into, math theory and Kelly criterions, and that's all for an advanced class. We'll get to that later. For the $100 bet, a lot of people ask me that. Fire. Use it. Take a shot. It's a great shot time. Fire $100 at like a plus 300, plus 350 underdog that you like. And if you lose the game, that's okay. You get $100 of bets back and just, fire a 110 side and win it. Easy.
There you go. All right, a couple more questions here. One that I think people that I think is a good one to understand is when things are typically, a book is typically at minus 110, and then you start to see them push something to maybe minus 118 or another side minus 105. Why are they doing that? Are they they're trying to kind of keep from moving the number?
Yes. So when they go to like minus 120 or minus 112, you'll see it a lot around 3 in football. They'll go minus 2.5, minus 135 because they're 130. I've seen it as high as 135 around a 3 before, because they don't want to give you the 3, because the game is very likely the most common ending score in all of football, especially in games that are somewhat equitably close, is 3. So they're going to give you everything in the world that they could possibly do to not give you the 3. Now, the difference between like a 19.5 and a 20, that's going to be like minus 115, minus 19.5, and minus 110, minus 20. It's going to be somewhat generally in that range.
So if you see kind of if you see a wide range on that from 110, if you see like a minus 120 and a minus 105 on the other side, that's kind of showing you that they don't want to move this number, but they probably should be moving the number.
Correct. They want to keep it somewhat in that range. And so, they're just trying to find the best way to make money, and they want to give you numbers sometimes, and they don't want to give you numbers sometimes. Feel free to take advantage of that.
Thank you, Collin, for jumping on here and giving us the ins and outs of the wonderful world of wagering. We may have to do more of this because I learned a lot. I thought it was pretty enjoyable. Thank you, Collin. Thank you for watching. We'll be back with more of this stuff. And hey, go win some money.
Go win some money.